Ambassador Sarah Chen looked out the window of the UES Harmony as it approached the Catherian homeworld. The planet below was massive, 3 times larger than Earth, with purple oceans and golden continents. Towering cities reached into the clouds, their spires gleaming in the light of twin suns. "It's beautiful," said Marcus Rodriguez, her aide. He was a young man from Mars Colony, eager and nervous about his first major diplomatic mission. Sarah nodded but kept her face calm. She had been Earth's ambassador to 12 different alien species. Each first contact was important, but this one might be the most crucial yet. The Catherian Empire controlled over 200 star systems. They were old, powerful, and had been expanding toward human space for the past 50 years. "Remember," she told Marcus and the rest of her team, "we're here to make peace. They've agreed to meet with us." "That's a good sign." Lieutenant Commander Hayes, their security chief, checked his sidearm one more time. He was a veteran of the border wars with the Zephyrian pirates. "I still don't like it, Ambassador. They wouldn't let us bring our own security detail down to the planet. Just me." "It's their custom," Sarah replied. "Large groups are seen as threatening. We have to respect their ways if we want them to respect ours." The Harmony was a civilian ship, painted white with the blue Earth symbol on its hull. It carried no weapons except for basic shields. Sarah had insisted on this. She wanted the Catherians to see that humanity came in peace. The ship landed at the Imperial spaceport. The gravity was heavier than Earth normal, and the air tasted different through their breathing masks. Catherian soldiers waited for them at the landing pad. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces were long and narrow, with large black eyes that showed no emotion. "Follow," one of them said in broken human language. His voice was deep and harsh. They walked through the spaceport and into the city. Sarah tried not to stare, but everything was incredible. The buildings were carved from single pieces of stone, covered in symbols she couldn't read. Flying vehicles moved between the towers in perfect formation. Citizens stopped to watch the humans pass. Most looked curious. Some looked disgusted. "They don't seem to like us much," Marcus whispered. "Stay positive," Sarah whispered back. "First impressions matter." The Imperial Palace sat at the center of the city. It was a pyramid shape, black stone that seemed to absorb light. Guards stood at every entrance, armed with energy weapons that hummed with power. The humans were searched twice before being allowed inside. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Pillars lined the walls, each one carved with scenes of Catherian victories over other species. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Emperor Vextar. He was ancient, even by Catherian standards. His gray skin was wrinkled and scarred. His forearms were decorated with golden rings. His black eyes fixed on Sarah as she approached. Beside him stood his advisors, all watching the humans with cold interest. "So," the Emperor said, his voice echoing in the vast room, "these are the humans. You are smaller than I expected." Sarah stopped at the designated distance from the throne and bowed her head slightly. "Your Imperial Majesty, I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the United Earth Government. We are honored by this audience." The Emperor leaned forward. "Honor, an interesting word. Do you know what honor means to us, little human?" "I hope to learn, Your Majesty." "Honor means strength. Honor means taking what is yours by right. Honor means not begging from your betters." His advisors made sounds that might have been laughter. Sarah kept her voice steady. "We come not as beggars, Your Majesty, but as neighbors. Our species share this galaxy. Surely we can find ways to coexist that benefit everyone." "Coexist?" The Emperor stood up. He was massive, towering over the humans even at a distance. "You speak as if we are equals. Your species has been in space for what, 300 years? We have ruled the stars for 30,000 years. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We have destroyed species that dared to oppose us." Marcus shifted nervously beside Sarah, but she remained calm. "Age brings wisdom, Your Majesty. But youth brings new ideas. Perhaps we can learn from each other." The Emperor walked down from his platform. Each step echoed like thunder. He stopped just a few feet from Sarah. This close, she could see the intelligence in his eyes, but also the cruelty. "Learn from you?" He examined her like she was an interesting insect. "What could you possibly teach us? You have no great empire. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are weak. You have never conquered another species. What makes you think you deserve our attention?" "Because we chose not to conquer," Sarah said. "We chose to explore, to trade, to make friends. We've helped species that were in trouble. We've shared our knowledge freely. We believe the galaxy is big enough for all of us. The Emperor's advisors whispered among themselves. One of them, a female with silver markings on her face, stepped forward. Your Majesty, she said, perhaps we should hear their proposal. It might be amusing. The Emperor waved a hand. Very well. Speak, human. What do you offer? Sarah activated a small holographic projector. A map of local space appeared between them. These 12 systems, she said, pointing to flashing dots, are disputed territory. We propose to split them equally. 6 for your empire, 6 for human colonies. In exchange, we offer full trade agreements. Our medical technology, our agricultural techniques, our entertainment media, all freely shared. The whispers from the advisors grew louder. The Emperor studied the map for a long moment. 6 systems, he said finally. You offer us 6 systems that we could take by force tomorrow? War is costly, Your Majesty, even for the mighty Catherian Empire. Why waste resources fighting when we could be trading? Because, the Emperor said, his voice growing louder, strength respects only strength. You come to us with proposals and treaties like merchants haggling in a market. You offer us trinkets and expect us to treat you as equals. He pointed one of his forearms at the hologram. We want all 12 systems. We want your colonies to pay tribute to the Empire. We want your fastest ships handed over to our fleet. We want your scientists to work for us. That is our offer. Sarah's heart sank, but she kept her voice professional. Your Majesty, with respect, that's not a negotiation. That's surrender. Exactly. The Emperor smiled, showing sharp teeth. You finally understand. We are not equals. We are not partners. You are a young species that has forgotten its place in the galaxy. We are here to remind you. And if we refuse, the Emperor's smile grew wider. Then we will teach you the same lesson we taught the Moravians, and the Skelligs, and the Threen Confederacy. He gestured to the pillars around the room. Look at those carvings, human. Each one shows a species that thought they could bargain with us. Where are they now? Sarah looked at the carvings. She saw battles, cities burning, ships destroyed. In every scene, Catherian warriors stood victorious over alien corpses. We are not them, Your Majesty. No, the Emperor agreed. You are smaller, weaker, more foolish. He turned and walked back to his throne. You have one day to consider our terms. Tomorrow you will give us your answer. Choose wisely, little ambassador. The galaxy is watching, Sarah bowed again. Thank you for your time, Your Majesty. We will consider your words carefully. As they were escorted from the throne room, Marcus leaned close to her. Ambassador, what do we do now? Sarah looked back once at the Emperor, who was already talking with his advisors. Now we try to find another way. There's always another way, but deep in her heart she feared there might not be. The next morning came too soon. Sarah had spent the night reviewing every diplomatic option she could think of. The Catherian demands were impossible to accept, but walking away meant war. She had to try one more time. Marcus brought her breakfast in their guest quarters. The food was Catherian, some kind of purple grain with bitter tea. Any luck with the alternative proposals? He asked. Sarah pushed the grain around on her plate. I've prepared 3 different offers. Each one gives them more than they deserve, but maybe it will be enough to avoid bloodshed. Lieutenant Commander Hayes joined them. His security scan of the building had kept him busy all night. Ambassador, I don't like this place. Too many guards. Too many weapons. And they've been moving military units around the city all night. Maybe they're just being careful, Marcus suggested. Hayes shook his head. This feels wrong. In my experience, when someone shows you this much force, they're planning to use it. Sarah stood up and straightened her diplomatic uniform. Whatever happens, we represent all of humanity today. We show them who we really are. They were escorted back to the throne room by the same guards as yesterday. But something had changed. More soldiers lined the walls now. The Emperor's advisors stood in a tight group, whispering urgently. And there were cameras everywhere. Dozens of recording devices pointed at the center of the room. The Emperor sat on his throne, but he was different too. Yesterday he had been arrogant but controlled. Today he seemed excited, like a predator about to strike. Ah, the humans return, he announced loudly. His voice carried clearly to every camera in the room. Have you considered our generous offer? Sarah stepped forward to the same spot as yesterday. Your Majesty, we have prepared counter-proposals that we believe serve both our peoples better. Counter-proposals? The Emperor laughed. Several of his advisors joined in. You still don't understand, do you? This is not a negotiation. This is us telling you how things will be. Your Majesty, surely reasonable beings can find common ground. Reasonable? The Emperor stood up quickly. You call us unreasonable? You come to our home, refuse our generous terms, and then dare to lecture us about reason. The cameras moved closer. Sarah noticed they were broadcasting live. She could see the transmission indicators blinking red on several devices. Your Majesty, we simply ask that you consider— Silence, the Emperor roared. His forearms spread wide. You have insulted us for the last time. You think because we granted you an audience, because we listened to your pathetic words, that we see you as equals? He began walking down from his platform again, but this time his movement was different. Aggressive, threatening. You are nothing, he continued. Your species is an accident. A cosmic joke. You have no right to bargain with your betters. Sarah felt the situation spinning out of control. Behind her, she heard Hayes shift position slightly. Marcus moved closer to her side. Your Majesty, please let us discuss this calmly. Calm. The Emperor was close now. Close enough that she could smell his breath. You want calm? I will show you calm. He gestured to his guards. They moved forward, raising their weapons. Your Majesty, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. We are diplomats under your protection. We came here in good faith. Protection? The Emperor smiled that terrible smile again. You think some ancient custom protects you? You think your diplomatic status matters to us. He turned to face the cameras. Let this be a lesson to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens to those who refuse the generous offer of the Cytherian Empire. He raised one of his hands. The gesture was clearly a signal. The guards opened fire. The energy beams lit up the room like lightning. Sarah felt the first shot hit her chest, burning through her uniform and into her body. The pain was incredible, but she stayed standing for a moment, looking directly into the nearest camera. Remember us, she whispered. Marcus screamed as the second volley hit them. He reached for Sarah as he fell, but the beams cut him down. Hayes managed to draw his weapon, but 20 guards were shooting at him. His return fire took down 2 Cytherians before he collapsed, but the Emperor wasn't finished. As the smoke cleared and the 3 humans lay dying on the floor, he walked over to Sarah. She was still breathing, still conscious. Look at me, he commanded. I want you to see who killed you. Sarah met his eyes. Even dying, she refused to show fear. Your last words, diplomat. Make them good ones for the cameras. Sarah used her final breath to speak clearly enough for every recording device to hear. Earth will remember. The Emperor laughed and placed his foot on her throat, crushing the life out of her. The cameras captured every moment. Marcus was next. He was barely alive, blood pooling beneath him. Please, he gasped. We only wanted peace. Peace is for the strong, the Emperor replied and shot him again. Hayes was unconscious but still breathing. The Emperor had him dragged before the cameras. This one was a soldier, he announced. He understood strength, but he served the wrong masters. Hayes opened his eyes as the Emperor raised his weapon. His last words were defiant. Earth doesn't surrender. The execution was broadcast live across Cytherian space and transmitted to every world in the Empire. Citizens watched in their homes as the 3 humans were murdered in cold blood. Some cheered. Others looked uncomfortable. A few turned off their screens. But the Emperor wasn't done with his lesson. He turned to the cameras one final time. I want every human colony to see this recording. I want every human ship to receive this message. This is the price of defiance. Your diplomats came here thinking they could bargain with gods. They were wrong. He walked closer to the main camera. His face filled the screen. To the humans watching this, you have 3 days to accept our original terms. All 12 systems, tribute payments, your best ships and scientists, everything we demanded. If you refuse, if you make us come to you, we will do to your colonies what we just did to your ambassadors. He gestured to the 3 bodies on the floor. This is mercy compared to what we will bring if you force our hand. We have destroyed entire species for less than the insult you have shown us today. The broadcast ended, but the recordings continued. Guards dragged the bodies away while maintenance workers cleaned the blood from the floor. Within an hour, it was as if the humans had never been there at all. In space above the planet, the UES Harmony waited for its passengers to return. Captain Williams monitored the communications channels, growing more worried as the hours passed. No word from the surface, no updates from the ambassador. Captain, his communications officer called out. I'm receiving a priority transmission from the planet. It's addressed to all human vessels. Put it on screen. The recording played. Captain Williams and his crew watched in horror as their passengers were murdered. When it ended, the bridge was silent. Captain, the communications officer whispered. What are our orders? Williams stared at the planet below. Somewhere down there, 3 good people had been killed for trying to make peace. Set course for Earth, maximum speed. Sir, shouldn't we try to recover the bodies? Williams shook his head. They're already gone. But their sacrifice won't be forgotten. As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, its emergency beacon began broadcasting a simple message to every human outpost. Diplomatic mission failed. All hands lost. War is coming. The message would reach Earth in 3 days. By then, the Catherian Empire expected human surrender. They were about to learn how badly they had miscalculated. The emergency session of the United Earth Assembly was called at 300 Earth Standard Time. Representatives from every human colony, every space station, every outpost in human space connected to the holographic conference. President Maria Martinez stood at the podium, her face pale but determined. The recording had reached Earth 6 hours ago. By now, every human alive had seen it. The footage of Ambassador Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, and Lieutenant Commander Hayes being executed had spread across every network, every personal device, every public screen in human space. Fellow humans, President Martinez began, her voice quiet but carrying clearly to every corner of the assembly hall. Today we witnessed an act of barbarism that has no place in civilized space. 3 of our finest people, acting as ambassadors of peace, were murdered in cold blood while under diplomatic protection. The assembly was silent. Representatives who normally argued loudly about trade routes and colonial budgets sat motionless, watching their president. Sarah Chen was more than an ambassador. She was a mother of 2 children. Marcus Rodriguez was 26 years old, fresh from the diplomatic academy, full of hope for the future. Lieutenant Commander Hayes served with honor in the border wars and died protecting his mission. Martinez paused, letting the weight of those words settle. The Catherian Empire believes this act of terror will frighten us into submission. They expect us to surrender our colonies, pay tribute, and bow down to their rule. They think we are weak because we chose diplomacy over conquest. She looked directly into the cameras broadcasting her words across human space. They are wrong. The president activated a holographic display showing human space. Hundreds of worlds, millions of ships, billions of people. For 3 centuries, humanity has been the peaceful species. We explore, we trade, we make friends. When we found the ruins of the ancient Prothean civilization, we shared the technology freely. When the Tauri plague threatened to destroy their homeworld, we sent medical ships. When the crystal beings of Xerion needed help stabilizing their sun, human engineers worked for 10 years to save them. Representatives nodded. They remembered these missions. But the galaxy has forgotten something about us. They see our kindness and mistake it for weakness. They see our restraint and think we are helpless. They have never asked themselves why a species that conquered its own world in just 10,000 years chose to be peaceful when it reached the stars. The president's voice began to grow stronger. I will remind them. We are the species that survived ice ages and plague. We are the descendants of warriors and builders, explorers and scientists. We learned to split the atom before we learned to leave our planet. We fought 2 global wars and chose to unite rather than destroy ourselves. She turned to face the assembly directly. Today I ask you to authorize military action against the Catherian Empire. Not for conquest, not for territory, but for justice. The vote was unanimous. Every representative, from the smallest mining colony to the great cities of Earth, voted for war. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in human history began. The Colonial Defense Force had been designed to protect human space from pirates and raiders. But humanity had other ships, other weapons, other capabilities that most aliens had never seen. Admiral Lisa Chen, Sarah's younger sister, was called to the presidential palace. She arrived in her dress uniform, her face grim with purpose. Admiral, the president said, I'm giving you command of Operation Justice. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have is yours to command. Admiral Chen nodded. What are our orders, Madam President? Find the ones responsible for murdering our people. Make sure they answer for their crimes. And send a message to the galaxy that humanity will not be intimidated. Rules of engagement? The Geneva Convention still applies. We protect civilians. We follow the laws of war. We remain human even when our enemies don't. Admiral Chen saluted. Understood. How long do we have? The Catherians gave us 3 days to surrender. Use that time. Let them think we're afraid. Let them believe their terror worked. As the Admiral left to begin preparations, emergency broadcasts went out across human space. Every ship was recalled. Every military base went to full alert. Every colony began evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel. But something else was happening too. Something the Catherians hadn't expected. Throughout human space, civilian ships began volunteering for military service. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even private yachts contacted military commanders offering their services. Factory workers volunteered for extra shifts building weapons and supplies. Scientists abandoned their research to work on military projects. On Earth, Sarah Chen's funeral was broadcast to every human world. Her children, 8-year-old David and 6-year-old Emma, placed flowers on her empty casket. Their tears were seen by 4 billion people. My mom wanted to make peace, David said into the cameras. She didn't want anyone to get hurt. But they hurt her anyway. His words spread across social media. Within hours, Remember Sarah was trending on every human communication network. Marcus Rodriguez's parents spoke at his memorial service on Mars. Our son believed in diplomacy, his father said. He believed people could solve problems by talking to each other. He died trying to prevent a war. Hayes's memorial service was attended by every veteran of the border wars who could make it to Luna Station. His former commander spoke for all of them. Tom Hayes died doing his duty. He protected his people to the end. We will honor that sacrifice. Meanwhile, intelligence services across human space worked overtime. Every piece of information about the Catherian Empire was gathered, analyzed, and shared. Their military capabilities, their political structure, their weaknesses, everything was catalogued. What they found surprised everyone. The Catherian Empire was powerful, but it was also fragile. They ruled through fear, crushing any resistance with overwhelming force. They had destroyed species before, but only smaller ones. They had never fought an enemy their own size. More importantly, they had never fought humans. On the second day, encrypted messages began reaching Catherian space. Human intelligence had identified resistance movements on conquered worlds, species that had been forced into the Empire but dreamed of freedom. The messages were simple. Help is coming. Be ready. Admiral Chen established her command center on the battleship UES Retribution, the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Around her, the largest fleet in human history assembled. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers full of fighters, but also converted civilian ships, their cargo holds filled with troops and supplies. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, all fleets report ready. 347 ships total. And our allies? The Tauri have pledged their support. They remember the medical aid we provided. The Xerian crystal beings have agreed to share their sensor technology. Several of the smaller species have offered bases for refueling. Admiral Chen studied the holographic map of Catherian space. 200 star systems. Billions of enemies. But somewhere in that space was the world where her sister had been murdered. Signal all ships, she ordered. We launch in 12 hours. Set course for the Catherian border. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, President Martinez made one final broadcast. This one was transmitted on all frequencies, sent to every species in known space. To the civilized worlds of the galaxy, she began. Today, humanity goes to war. Not for conquest, not for expansion, but for justice. We will not allow barbarism to go unpunished. We will not let terror succeed. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To the Catherian Empire, you wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Consider yourselves our teachers. Class is about to begin. The message reached the Catherian capital 18 hours later. Emperor Vextar watched it in his throne room, surrounded by his advisors. How many ships? He asked. Our spies report less than 400 vessels, Your Majesty. A pathetic response, the Emperor smiled. Good. We will destroy them quickly and use the wreckage to remind the galaxy of our power. But his military advisors looked less confident. One of them, General Kethvar, had studied human history. Your Majesty, he said carefully, perhaps we should consider the humans more carefully. Their species has a history of what? The Emperor snapped. Of running away? Of hiding behind diplomacy? They are cowards who sent 3 people to face our entire empire. Yes, Your Majesty, but they are cowards who conquered their own world. The Emperor waved dismissively. Ancient history. They have been soft for centuries now. Watch how quickly they break when they face real power. General Kethvar said nothing more, but he quietly began reviewing the deployment of Catherian forces. Something told him they were going to need every ship they had. The first Catherian patrol never saw them coming. Admiral Chen's forces had divided into 17 separate fleets, each targeting a different system along the Catherian border. They emerged from hyperspace using a new human technique, micro-jumps that appeared as sensor ghosts until it was too late. Captain Torres commanded the strike on Kethmaran, a mining world defended by only 12 Catherian ships. His converted cargo haulers looked harmless right up until they launched their missiles. All targets destroyed, he reported to Admiral Chen. Minimal civilian casualties. The mining stations are intact. Excellent. Secure the system and establish communication with the local population. This pattern repeated across 17 systems simultaneously. The Catherian Empire's outer defenses simply vanished in the first 6 hours of the war. But the real shock came from what happened next. Instead of occupying the conquered worlds, human forces immediately began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple, transmitted in dozens of alien languages. Citizens of the Catherian Empire, we are the humans. We are not here to conquer you. We are here to remove your oppressors. Any being who wishes freedom may join us. Any being who remains neutral will be protected. Only those who support the Empire will be treated as enemies. The broadcasts included something that stunned alien populations across the Empire. The full recording of the Diplomatic massacre, along with historical footage of other Catherian atrocities. For the first time, many conquered species saw what their rulers had done in their name. On Thessia Prime, a former independent world absorbed by the Empire 50 years earlier, revolution broke out within hours. The blue-skinned Thessians had never forgotten their freedom. Human broadcasts showed them how to disable Catherian communication systems, how to sabotage their weapons, how to coordinate resistance. Similar uprisings erupted on 14 different worlds. The Catherian Empire found itself fighting not just humans, but its own subjects. Emperor Vextar raged in his throne room as reports poured in. How is this possible? Our forces outnumber them 10 to 1. General Kethvar tried to explain. Your Majesty, they're not fighting like any enemy we've faced before. They target our command centers, our communications, our supply lines. They avoid direct confrontation with our main fleets. Cowards. Perhaps, Your Majesty, but effective cowards. We've lost contact with 63 systems in the past week. What the general didn't mention was how the humans were fighting. Catherian military doctrine was simple. Overwhelming force applied directly. Find the enemy, engage with superior numbers, destroy them completely. It had worked for thousands of years against species that fought the same way. Humans didn't fight the same way. Admiral Chen's forces used tactics the galaxy had never seen. They struck at night when possible, using the darkness that most alien species feared. They employed psychological warfare, broadcasting messages that demoralized enemy troops and encouraged civilian rebellion. They used electronic warfare to disrupt Catherian communications at crucial moments. Most disturbing to Catherian commanders, humans seemed to understand their enemy better than their enemy understood them. Human intelligence had identified key weaknesses in Catherian society and exploited them ruthlessly. The Empire ruled through rigid hierarchy. Humans targeted command structures, leaving Catherian forces leaderless and confused. The Empire controlled information strictly. Humans flooded their networks with truth, showing subject species what their rulers really were. The Empire demanded absolute loyalty. Humans offered something the Empire never had: hope. On Mortania, a world of insect-like beings who had been enslaved by the Catherians for centuries, human special forces landed secretly at night. Within days, they had trained local resistance fighters in modern weapons and tactics. When the Catherian garrison tried to suppress the rebellion, they found themselves facing not helpless slaves, but organized guerrilla fighters. Captain Sarah Martinez, no relation to the president, led the human team on Mortania. She had volunteered for the mission because her grandfather had been a guerrilla fighter in Earth's South American conflicts. Remember, she told the Mortanian rebels, "You know this world better than they do, use that. Hit them where they're weak, disappear before they can respond, make them afraid to leave their bases." The tactics worked. Within 2 weeks, the Catherian garrison was requesting reinforcements. Within a month, they were requesting evacuation. Similar patterns emerged across the Empire. Human forces rarely engaged in direct fleet battles. Instead, they turned every occupied world into a nightmare for Catherian administrators. Supply convoys were attacked. Communication centers were sabotaged. Local populations, inspired by human broadcasts and aided by human advisors, rose up against their oppressors. The psychological impact was devastating. Catherian soldiers, trained to fight conventional enemies, found themselves constantly looking over their shoulders. They didn't know which civilians might be resistance fighters. They couldn't trust their communications. They couldn't predict where the humans would strike next. After a month of this warfare, Emperor Vextar finally lost his temper completely. He summoned his military council and issued a direct order. "Enough! I want every human ship destroyed. I want every world that has helped them burn to ash. I don't care about casualties. I don't care about the cost. Show these insects what happens when they challenge the Empire," General Kethvar protested. "Your Majesty, if we start destroying entire worlds, we'll lose the support of neutral species. The galactic community will remember who rules here," the Emperor roared. "Deploy the battle fleets. Find the humans and crush them." The order went out across Catherian space. Every available warship was mobilized for a massive offensive. The humans had been dancing around the edges of the Empire for weeks. Now they would face the full might of Catherian military power. Admiral Chen received the intelligence reports from her spy networks. "They're concentrating everything for one big push," her tactical officer reported. "Over 800 ships massing near their capital system." Finally, Admiral Chen said quietly, "They're playing our game now." She had been waiting for this moment. The hit-and-run attacks, the support for rebellions, the psychological warfare, it had all been preparation for this. The Catherians were angry, frustrated, and making their first strategic mistake of the war. They were abandoning the defensive strategy that should have favored them and seeking a decisive battle that would favor humanity. "Signal all fleets," Admiral Chen ordered. "Execute Plan Omega. All ships converge on the Catherian capital system." "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the Emperor himself. He's demanding our surrender. Put it on screen." Emperor Vextar's face appeared, twisted with rage. "Human Admiral, I know you can hear this. Your pathetic raids end now. I am bringing 800 ships to destroy you. Surrender immediately, or I will ensure your species is wiped from the galaxy." Admiral Chen considered her response for a moment. Then she activated the reply transmission. "Emperor Vextar," she said calmly, "you murdered my sister under diplomatic protection. You executed unarmed civilians on live broadcast. You threatened to destroy human colonies if we didn't submit to your demands." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Now you'll learn what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The message was broadcast on all frequencies across Catherian space. Within hours, it reached every world in the Empire, every neutral species watching the conflict, every resistance movement fighting for freedom. The decisive battle was about to begin, and for the first time since the war started, Admiral Chen was exactly where she wanted to be, facing the entire Catherian fleet in open combat. The enemy was about to discover that all the raids, all the guerrilla tactics, all the psychological warfare had been just the opening act. The real demonstration of human military capability was about to begin. The Battle of Kitharos Prime began at dawn on the capital world below. Admiral Chen's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 347 human ships facing 812 Catherian vessels. Emperor Vextar watched from his orbital platform, surrounded by his advisors and military commanders. "Look at them," he laughed. "Barely 300 ships against our mighty fleet. This will be over in an hour." General Kethvar studied the tactical displays more carefully. Something bothered him about the human formation. They weren't arranged for a defensive battle or a desperate charge. Instead, they had positioned themselves in a complex pattern he didn't recognize. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. Perhaps we should study their deployment before. Study? The Emperor snapped. We outnumber them 3-1. Attack immediately. The Catherian fleet moved forward in their traditional formation, a massive wall of battleships supported by cruisers and destroyers. It was the same tactic they had used for thousands of years, the same formation that had crushed dozens of species. Admiral Chen watched their approach from the bridge of the Retribution. Just as predicted, she told her tactical officer. They're using Historical Formation 7 from their military archives. How can you be sure, Admiral? Because humans have been studying war for our entire history. We know every battle formation ever devised by any species in the galaxy. We've run computer simulations on all of them. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships execute Phoenix Formation. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting to show the galaxy who we really are. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions. To Catherian observers, it looked like panic. The neat formation dissolved into dozens of smaller groups, each moving on seemingly random courses. Emperor Vextar clapped his 4 hands together. See, they run like cowards. Press the attack! But General Kethvar was beginning to understand. The human ships weren't running randomly. Each group was moving to a specific position, following a plan that turned the entire battlefield into something he had never seen before. Your Majesty, he said urgently, I think they're... The trap closed. Every human ship in the scattered formation suddenly fired at once. But they weren't aiming at the Catherian ships in front of them. Instead, they were targeting specific points in space, creating overlapping fields of fire that caught the advancing Catherian fleet in a devastating crossfire. The Catherian battle formation, designed to concentrate firepower forward, was helpless against attacks from multiple directions. Ships that had been protected by their neighbors suddenly found themselves exposed. The carefully maintained formation began to collapse as captains broke ranks to avoid the withering fire. Impossible, the Emperor screamed. How did they know our battle plans? Admiral Chen could have answered him. Human intelligence had been studying Catherian military doctrine for months, analyzing every battle they had ever fought, identifying the weaknesses in their tactics. But she was too busy directing the battle to explain. Second wave, execute hammer strike, she ordered. The human ships regrouped with mechanical precision, forming new attack formations faster than the Catherians could respond. Each maneuver had been practiced hundreds of times in simulation. Every captain knew exactly where to be and when to be there. The Catherian fleet tried to adapt, but their commanders had never faced an enemy like this. Human tactics changed from minute to minute, formations flowing like water around their attempts at counterattacks. Admiral, reported Captain Torres from his converted cargo hauler, their command ship is trying to withdraw. Denied, Admiral Chen replied coldly. All units priority target the command vessel. And this. The massive Catherian flagship Emperor's Wrath found itself suddenly surrounded by 50 human ships. Its powerful shields held for nearly 3 minutes under the concentrated bombardment before finally failing. General Kethvar died at his post, still trying to coordinate his fleet's defense. His last transmission was a warning to the capital. Evacuate the Emperor. The humans are not what we thought they were. Within 4 hours, the mighty Catherian fleet was destroyed. Only a handful of ships escaped to carry word of the disaster back to the Empire. Admiral Chen's forces had lost just 18 vessels. But the space battle was only the beginning. Emperor Vextar, watching his fleet die from his orbital platform, made his final desperate decision. If I cannot rule the galaxy, he snarled, then I will show it the price of defying me. He activated the planetary destruction system, a weapon designed to crack the crust of worlds that resisted the Empire. His own capital, with its billions of citizens, would be the demonstration. The humans want justice? He screamed at the cameras still broadcasting across the galaxy. I will show them justice. I will destroy this world and blame them for its death. The galaxy will see that defying the Empire leads only to destruction. Admiral Chen detected the massive energy buildup immediately. All ships, emergency acceleration toward the planet. Launch every landing craft, every shuttle, every escape pod. We have maybe 20 minutes before that weapon fires. The human fleet dove toward the planet at maximum speed, racing against time. Landing craft launched while still in the upper atmosphere. Combat engineers parachuted directly onto the weapon platform. Marines assaulted fortified positions while the ground was still shaking beneath them. Lieutenant Sarah Kim was among the first humans to reach the weapon control center. She found Emperor Vextar there personally, his four hands working frantically at the activation controls. "Stop," she shouted, her rifle trained on him. He turned to face her and she saw something she hadn't expected in his black eyes. Fear. "You're too late, human," he said. "In 3 minutes this world dies. Billions of my own people killed by your aggression. How will the galaxy judge you then?" Lieutenant Kim kept her weapon steady. "The galaxy will judge me as someone who tried to save innocent lives." "How will it judge you?" For a moment, something like doubt flickered in the Emperor's expression. Then his arrogance returned. "I am Emperor. I do not answer to lesser beings." He reached for the final activation switch. Kim fired. Emperor Vextar collapsed, the energy weapon burning through his chest. With his dying breath, he managed to activate the Doomsday device. But human engineers were already swarming over the weapon platform. They had studied Catherian technology for months, preparing for exactly this situation. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, named for the murdered Diplomat, led the team that shut down the planet killer with just 47 seconds to spare. The war was over. In the aftermath, something unprecedented happened. Instead of occupying Catherian space, Admiral Chen did something that shocked the galaxy. She called for a peace conference. The surviving Catherian leaders, expecting execution or slavery, were brought before a human tribunal. But instead of revenge, they found something they had never experienced: justice. Admiral Chen addressed the assembly, her words broadcast to every world in known space. The Catherian Empire committed crimes against peace, crimes against sentient beings, and crimes against the basic dignity that all life deserves. But humanity does not believe in collective punishment. We will hold accountable those responsible for these crimes, but we will not punish innocent civilians for the actions of their leaders. The trials that followed became a model for the galaxy. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. The guilty were punished according to law, not vengeance. Some Catherian leaders were executed for their crimes. Others received prison sentences. But the vast majority of Catherian citizens were offered something their empire had never given its subjects: a choice. They could form their own governments, elect their own leaders, determine their own futures. Humans would provide aid during the transition, but not rule. The former emperor's throne room was converted into a memorial. At its center stood a simple monument to Ambassador Sarah Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, and Lieutenant Commander Hayes. The inscription, in the languages of every species in the galaxy, read simply, "They came in peace." 6 months later, Admiral Chen returned to Earth. At the spaceport, she was met by 2 children, Sarah's son David and daughter Emma. "Did you find the bad people who hurt Mom?" David asked. Admiral Chen knelt down to his level. "Yes," she said. "We found them, and we made sure they can never hurt anyone else." "Are you sad that you had to fight them?" Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. "Yes," she said finally. "Fighting should always be the last choice. But sometimes when people won't listen to words, you have to speak in a language they understand." Emma, now 7 years old, looked up at her aunt. "Will there be more wars?" "I hope not," Admiral Chen replied. "But if there are, the galaxy now knows something important about humanity. We prefer peace, but we're very good at war. Most importantly, we know the difference between justice and revenge." The Catherian War, as historians would later call it, lasted only 6 months, but its effects echoed across the galaxy for generations. Dozens of species that had been conquered by the Empire regained their freedom. Tyrants on 100 worlds looked at their own actions and wondered if they might be next. And in the memorial gardens on Earth, where statues honored Sarah Chen and her companions. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part.